Today, I'm going to share with you a 5-step process on how to provide full truckload quotes for shippers. If you're a freight broker or a freight agent and you need help quoting freight for shippers or doing freight quotes or understanding freight rates, you definitely want to tune in, because today I'm going to share with you a 5-step process. Matter of fact, here are my notes, and you will be able to download these notes at the end through a cheat sheet. So if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you a link where you can download this cheat sheet, which will include all 5 steps. All right. So first and foremost, before we jump into the training, the freight rates and freight quotes is one of the things that new freight brokers and freight agents struggle with the most. And the reason being is because freight rates are very dynamic. And what I mean by that is from lane to lane, from equipment to equipment, the rates are not the same. It's not like it's $2 or $2.50 or $3 a mile in every lane. Perfect example. When you move a load from Boston, a van load from Boston to Chicago, when I first started as a freight brokerage back in 2003, 2004, it was common for us to pay $1 a mile. So if it was an 800-mile run, you'd pay $800 to the truck. Okay. Now this is back then. I'm just giving you a story here, right? That's not what it'll go for today, but it's still not a high paying lane. So you might pay $800 to go from Boston to Chicago. But if you go from Chicago to Boston back then, we'd have to pay $2 a mile. Same lane, same equipment, same freight, but you pay double the rate. And that's what I mean by dynamic. It's driven by supply and demand. Providing freight quotes, you have to first understand that up front. That's very important that you understand. It doesn't matter how much it costs to operate a truck. It doesn't matter how much the carrier wants. It doesn't matter what the shipper wants to pay. What matters is supply and demand. The ratio of trucks to the ratio of loads. If there's more trucks than there are loads, it drives rates down. If there's more loads than there are trucks, it drives rates up. Very simple fundamental that you have to understand. All right, so now let's jump into the 5-part process. The first step, and a very important step, is when quoting the freight for a shipper, you have to make sure you get detailed information about the shipment. For example, you have to know the type of equipment it's going on. Is it going on a van? Is it going on a reefer? Is it going on a flatbed? Is there some sort of specialized equipment that they need? You need to understand the origin, right? You need to understand the destination, the city, state, or maybe zip, but you need to understand where it's picking up and where it's delivering to, right? So those are details that you need. You need to understand, does it deliver to a dock, or do you need some specialized equipment like a forklift or something else in order to get the freight off the truck? Because that's going to change the rate. That's going to make a difference. Okay. Does it require pallet exchange? Does it require pads and straps? I mean, any of the accessorial charges or special requirements that this load is going to need, you need to understand those things up front. Okay. So get full and complete details on the lane that you are quoting. Now, you don't need to know the exact address where it's picking up or the exact delivery location. You don't need to know that, but you do need to know those fundamentals before you start understanding what the rate is going to be and providing a freight quote to your shipper. Okay, so that's step number 1. Number 2, use an online rating tool to better understand the historical pricing of that lane based on that specific equipment. Now, what do I mean by that? Like, take Truckstop or DAT. You can go in there and you can put a lane, Buffalo to Atlanta, van freight, and it's going to give you some historical data on what trucks are getting paid from point A to point B over the last 30, 60, 90, 180 days. So you're going to have some historical data there. And that data is going to give you kind of some highs and lows and averages. The mistake that people make is they try to use that data exclusively to rate the loads, to try to provide a freight quote to the shipper because they're trying to cheat and cut corners. But the fact is that data is not going to allow you to create highly accurate rates because you don't fully understand the spot market rate. And the spot market is what the cost of a truck today in or out of any given market. All right. So you can use those tools to gather some market intelligence and understand the baseline of what the rates are going to be based on those specific requirements. That's step number 2. Step number 3, you're going to want to post that load to whatever load board you're using. DAT, Truckstop, Direct Freight, 123 load board, whatever you're using, whatever load board you're using, post the load to that load board and then start taking calls from carriers. Now, it's very important that you understand something up front. When you start taking calls from carriers, once they see that load is posted, What you don't want to do is you do not want to ask the carrier, okay, so what do you need to run this load? You don't want to ask them what their rate is. What you're trying to do is what I call find the market. You're trying to find the spot market rate. And so if you ask them what they want, they're going to tell you $2, $3, $4 a mile because that's what they'd love to have. But that doesn't mean that's what the market dictates. That doesn't mean that's what the market is willing to pay. That doesn't mean it's the true spot market. Now it might be, but the only way to understand that rate is to start out low. You have to start very low in the range that you gathered from the rating tools and then work your way up and find the market. So what happens a lot of times when you post these loads, some carrier calls in, you start very low, carrier's not happy, they hang up the phone. You know now that there's a good chance that you might be a little bit too low. So you inch it up on the next call and so forth, and so on and so forth. So this is how you understand the spot market in any given lane. You can figure out the spot market very, very quickly with just this strategy. You can average and get a sense as to where that market is and what you're going to have to pay a truck so that you can service whatever that load is for that particular shipper. All right. So that's step number 3. Step number 4, you can also call trucks that match the lane that you posted, right? So you posted a load and there are going to be some truck matches on there. In most cases, you can call those carriers and do the exact same thing. Your goal is to find the market, which is the lowest rate that you can find in the spot market or close to the lowest in the bottom half of that spot market, so that you know what your true cost of a truck can be so you can then mark it up, okay? Oh, you can also check the historical lane history, right? So on a lot of the load boards, you can see a lane history. Even if they don't have trucks posted today, you can see a history of carriers that have posted their truck in any given lane over the last 30, 60, 90 days. And then you can call those carriers knowing that they've posted their truck 30 times for Buffalo to Atlanta in the last 60 days gives you a pretty good indication that that carrier has trucks in Buffalo looking to go to Atlanta quite often. So you might want to call them even if they don't have a truck posted today. Okay, so that's another little bit of a tip there to try to help you source carriers and identify what the real spot market is. And then number 5, of course, is you have to add your markup, right? Once you understand the true cost to buy a truck from point A to point B, now you have to add your markup. So simple example, a lane from A to B, you've identified the spot market to buy a truck for $1,000. Just easy math. What a lot of carriers are going to do is they're going to probably mark that up $100 to $200, and they're going to provide an all-in freight quote to their shipper of $1,100 to $1,200. That's very typical transaction in brokerage. And so you're going to make $100 to $200 on that load. Some will quote more, some will quote less, but on average, it's probably going to fall somewhere in that 10 to 20% range for profit margin. Now, the more competitive the market is, particularly on freight quotes with new shippers, you might have to bring that margin down a little bit. The better of a relationship that you have with the shipper, you may be able to raise that margin up a little bit. So ultimately, those are the 5 steps. Listen, if that helped you, here's what I'm going to do. I want to give you guys a free cheat sheet that you can download. Here's all you got to do. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/freight quote. If you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/freight quote, you will get this cheat sheet. You'll get the exact cheat sheet, which will walk you through this. Now, I went through this really fast and I stumbled a little bit. So make sure you download the free cheat sheet. It's absolutely free. And for those of you that are curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent and you need some help and you're looking for an online course or a mentor to help you get from A to Z, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. We're well known to be the most cost-effective and comprehensive online freight broker and freight agent training program. And again, you can check that out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com. And we have a 60-day, 100% unconditional money back guarantee. Nobody in the industry does that. Appreciate you guys being here. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you next week on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live.